Uh, it was interesting because right up until I joined Jerry Mulligan, I was still self-taught on this instrument and had figured out my own scales. Even on Claude Thornhill's band, his theme song, beautiful song called Snowfall, had a repeated pattern in a hard key with no open strings that went up through a tenth.
Didn't you use a capo?
That kind of thing over and over again. And I hadn't learned to play across the board very well. And so I had to sit in my hotel room the second night I was on the band and teach myself another way to finger that thing so that I could play it legato. I wanted it to sound right. So anyway, after a summer on that band, my hand was in much better shape than it had been. And by the time I joined Jerry, I was able to play in all the keys now, and I could play all the scales. But my upper register, I didn't really know how to be accurate up there unless I worked my way up to those notes. And I got on Jerry's band, and he had written out bass lines for some of his original tunes that started up there. And I was making chalk marks. I was trying to figure out how to be accurate up there. So the only guy I'd ever talked to while I was with Marion, we did a CBS radio show, and the bass player on staff there was Trigger Alpert. And he had shown me where his rehearsal room was, where he practiced the bass for his lessons. And he's the only guy I had ever talked to me about studying. So I called him up and I said, "Who's your teacher?" And fortunately, he said it was Fred Zimmerman, who was the first bassist at the New York Philharmonic at that time. But not only was he a great player, he was a great teacher. He really knew how to, he didn't play stuff and show you how great he could play. He would show you what you needed to know in order to get better, you know. So I'm still on the road with Jerry, and I would take a lesson with Fred and then go out for a couple of weeks and practice like mad and come back and take another lesson. And inside of 6 or 8 months, I was on to what the real fingering system for this instrument is, and I was able to be accurate in the upper register, and I could play with the bow, which I never had been able to do before. So it was a very fortunate association. And the nice thing about Fred was that he was also an art collector. He was an authority on the signatures of Paul Klee. He could look at a painting and tell you what year he did it by the signature. And he had a whole bunch of German expressionists, and he had a collection of pre-Columbian gold weights, little beautiful sculptures. And he had all the Skira art books. So I would go early to my lessons and look at all of his stuff. I just loved browsing through his collection. And he was glad to see that I was interested in art. And as I got better, I played something for him one day that he had given me to work on, and he said, "Oh, that was wonderful." He said, he called his wife in, he said, "Listen to this, play that again." I played it again. He says, "Isn't that wonderful?" And he's not even serious. That means I didn't want to be in the Philharmonic. But anyway, he was a great help to me, and I still remember a lot of the stuff that he showed me. So in there someplace, while I was working with Jerry, I had one of the thrills of my life, which was a chance to play with the Duke Ellington band. We were playing a concert with Duke, Jerry's quartet and Duke's band, up at the Louison Stadium, which used to be up near Columbia University. It was an open air stadium, and it looked like rain, and his bass player hadn't showed up. So he's looking at the sky, looking at his watch. I'm standing there with my bass ready to play with Jerry. Duke comes over and grabs me by the sleeve and says, "Come with me." And he takes me out on stage. And the bass music stand was right next to the piano. And I saw the book was on the floor, so I started to get it out. And Britt Woodman behind me says, "Don't do that, that's all been changed." And so evidently, Jimmy Woody was the bass player who was supposed to be there. Evidently, he hadn't marked any of the changes in the parts. So Britt says, on this first number, just hang around B flat, we'll tell you when to change, you know. So I hung around B flat for a few choruses, and then when there was a change, they would call chord changes, and they got me through it. Then Duke did the sensible thing, which was to go way back in his book to tunes that I probably would know, and I got through those just fine. But when he came to a ballad that I didn't know, suddenly he was at the piano, and he would just point to my note just before I needed it. He didn't play it, he just pointed to it. And when he saw I was picking that up, he just led me through the whole tune, note by note. And it sounded like I knew what I was doing. So I'm standing there with the biggest grin on my face. I'm having such a wonderful time. And when I get off, it's time to play with Jerry. Jerry comes over to Duke kind of grumpy and said, "Man, you're tiring out my bass player." And then he says to me, "How come you don't have that much fun when you're playing with me?" I said, "Oh, Jerry, come on, you get to play with Duke all the time, you know, let me have my fun." So we were at a festival down in French Lick, Indiana later that summer, and it was the first time they'd had jazz at this place, and it was kind of lily white. So George Wein, who produced the thing, said, "Now look, I don't want any of my black musicians to feel uncomfortable down here. You do what you have to do, but I want you to make everybody comfortable." So we walk into the hotel, and Art Farmer and Dave Bailey were the other two members of our quartet, and it was Bob Brookman. And they're not interested in being uncomfortable either, you know, but there's a beautiful swimming pool there. And they're saying, you know, should we? And while they're thinking it over, the door opens, and here comes Dizzy Gillespie, who's got one of those big towels from the hotel, like a cape with a little Egyptian scarab pin holding it together here. And he's got a embroidered Uzbek cap on, and he's got some Persian slippers that the toes curl up. And he's got a cigarette holder about this long made out of ivory from Egypt, and he's got a Blaupunk portable radio in his left hand, and he walks out and he's ready to integrate the pool. So he comes out and puts all of his stuff down by a chair, and he looks over, and there's Jimmy McPartland is standing there in a bathing suit. So he puts his arm around Jimmy, and they go up on the diving board, and together they jump in the pool. So I was about to go up to my room and see if I could get my bathing suit together, and the door opens of the elevator, and there's Duke standing there. And he says, "Oh, Mr. Crow," he said, "I never had the opportunity to remunerate you for the excellent service that you provided for us back there." And I said, "Duke, that was the thrill of my life. Please be my guest." So he bowed and went on into the dining room, and I went on into the pool. And that was my thrill with Duke. So, in honor of that, I think we ought to play an Ellington too.
Yeah. Do you have one in mind?
Did I write one down there? Yes, I did.
We did.
We had a combination.
Oh.
Actually, Duke had a number of songs, original tunes that he wrote, that were based on an old song called Rose Room. So we're going to do Rose Room and one of those tunes.
All right. All right.
Who's got the melody?
You got the melody.
Oh, okay.
On Rose Room, I got the melody on one of those tunes.